Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
We've been having activity in our house lately. I, a 26-year-old female, have always been fascinated by all things paranormal, but there was a time in my life when I didn't totally believe. I was open to the idea of some sort of paranormal entity existing somewhere, but in my heart didn't really put much stock in it. Over the years, that has drastically changed. Here is one of the encounters that made me a believer. When my wife and I were newly married, we were very close with another couple who lived in our area. We would travel with them, double date with them, and we considered them our best friends. One day, they went out of town and asked us to watch their animals for them. They had a cat, a bearded dragon, a red iguana, and 2 rats. We agreed to watch them, and they left. I worked very close to their home, so I would go over to the house once in the morning, once in the afternoon on my lunch hour, and then again in the evening. Usually, I would be alone for the morning and afternoon visits due to my job being closest to their home, and then my wife would join me for the evening visit. One day, during my afternoon visit, I purposely left the lights in their home off. They were getting enough natural light through the house to see fairly well without the lights on that day, and I wanted to save them on their electric bill while they were gone. Again, this was a conscious choice to leave their lights off. This was something I actively thought about. I did not touch their lights. After I checked on the animals, I went back to work, again leaving every light switch untouched. When my wife and I arrived back that evening, I froze in the driveway. I could see from where I was standing outside that the entryway and hallway lights were both on. I told my wife, "I didn't turn those lights on. I didn't touch them." She asked me if I was sure, and I told her that I was 1000% sure. We thought that maybe someone from their HOA had come by, or one of their family members had. Or that someone had noticed that they were out of town and broken in. We each put a car key between our knuckles and entered the house. The house was eerily quiet. I couldn't hear any of the animals moving around, and the air felt stale. I could have choked on it stale. We slowly made our way through the house, checking closets and looking for any sign of disturbance. Every light was on in every room that we entered. After we had checked every room and absolutely nothing was out of place, we both relaxed, somewhat. I even started to gaslight myself into believing that I had somehow turned on every single light in every single room, even the rooms I hadn't entered. Suddenly, we heard a loud thud come from the reptile room, the one we had literally just left. The thud was loud enough that the house shook. We threw the door open, and nothing was disturbed. Nothing had fallen, nothing had moved. Not an inch. The only thing that had changed was the bearded dragon. The bearded dragon's enclosure was large and positioned on the floor, with a sliding glass door front. The dragon, who had been peacefully resting when we'd checked just a minute before, was now rhythmically tapping its nose against the glass in a perfect pattern. Tap. 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 Over and over again. It was almost robotic. I stared in disbelief. I had never seen an animal behave like that before. I walked over to the enclosure and gently slid the glass door open. The dragon continued trying to tap on the glass even though it was no longer there for another second or two, and then suddenly its beard went pitch black. It scrambled out of the enclosure and took off across the floor, headed straight for the door. Luckily, my wife was able to close the door before he escaped. Once he reached the door, he started rhythmically tapping on it in the same pattern he had on the glass. Tap. 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 Suddenly, on the other side of the door, we heard another loud thud, even louder than the first one, and in the same second, the cat started screaming. Not meowing. Screaming. It was a horrible sound, but I didn't have time to react before I heard clanging and clattering in the other enclosures behind me. The iguana was wildly whipping its tail against the sides of the enclosure and almost hissing. It was a horrifying sight. I quickly picked up the bearded dragon and put him back in his enclosure, where he continued tapping immediately while my wife grabbed for the doorknob. I'll never forget the fear and disbelief in her voice when she said,
"It won't open."
I flew to the door and started yanking as hard as I could. The knob wouldn't even turn. Not like it was broken, like someone was holding it from the other side. I started banging on the door and screaming, true panic setting in. My head felt fuzzy, my chest felt tight, and I almost thought I was going to pass out. Then, suddenly, it all stopped. The cat stopped screaming. The iguana stopped whipping. The dragon stopped tapping, and the doorknob was easily moved. When we left that room, the rest of the lights in the house were now off. My wife and I bolted out of the house as fast as we could and were silent the whole drive home. The next day, I almost convinced myself that it was a fluke and that the animals had upset each other. I talked to my friend to tell her about the weird experience, to which she replied,
Oh, I forgot to mention. We've been having activity in the house lately.
"What do you mean by activity?" I responded. Which, she explained that the former resident of her home had been an elderly man that passed away in the home after owning it for 40 years. She told me that ever since they had started their renovations, she had seen a male figure standing in the corners of the home or the base of the stairs. That he would rile the animals up. And that he would often mess with the lights in the house. She said he had never been violent. More mischievous. As if he was throwing little fits about the changes they were making. After that, I reevaluated my whole outlook on my belief in the paranormal. I sure as hell believe it now.
If you're enjoying today's video, smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos and interesting stories. Now let's get back to the stories of our lives.
A weird laugh I heard in rural Minnesota. I used to live alone in northern rural Minnesota, near the Canadian border, in a cabin as a seasonal employee, and one winter night I was trying to go to sleep at 2 a.m. and I heard the weirdest evil male laugh ever. The laugh that I heard was exactly like a horror movie laugh. It lasted about a minute, then faded away slowly. I was in disbelief and thought maybe it was my phone, so I took a look at it and it wasn't. I believe the laugh came from the outside. For a second I thought someone was playing a joke on me, but there was a snowstorm happening and it was too late. People from the company used to live about an hour away, and I did not have any roommates. I got up and looked outside by the window, but I did not see anything. I often asked myself how a laugh can be heard so clearly and pitched with a snowstorm and strong winds happening, plus the slow fading made it even creepier. I never heard anything like it before. It was very clear and dark and malicious. After a year, the company contacted me back home asking me if I wanted to work there again, and because of the laugh that I heard, I declined.
If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and check out more videos from the channel.